Good afternoon, everyone. Dave, thank you for the introduction here. I am Kelly McGovern. I'm the Superintendent of Schools here in Sweetwater 1 in Rock Springs. When we all stood up, I don't want any of you to panic and think that we're going to be here, that I'm going to take 20 minutes and every one of these people are going to take 20 minutes. But I truly believe that we're only as strong as the people that we work with and the team that you learn with and you grow with. So I'm really excited because I do have some of the people and some of the administration that I have close professional relationships with here with me today, so we can share with you a little bit about the school district, who we are for your school district, things that we're looking forward to, what we're working on, including graduation rate. Also, as Dave mentioned, we're going to be talking to you a little bit about what are the priorities for the district for professional development and how do we determine those. And then also, as Dave mentioned, really the cost savings task force that I'll mention at the end. I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not, but we'll go ahead and we'll share that information out just a little bit. Before I go ahead and start, I just kind of want to preface some things before we begin, and then we'll let the people with me introduce themselves and we'll get rolling. But before we go ahead and we talk about who we are and things that you would like to see for your school district, we really are facing a very, very difficult time in the next several years. Dave had mentioned about up into the billions of dollars for the shortfall on the local level for Rock Springs for our district, and that includes Farson as well as Wamsutter. We are a minimum of about $3.7 million in the hole, and that is for next year. And so then anything that happens with the legislature, any additional hits for that, will make that deficit be much greater. And so I truly cannot stress to you how grave of a concern that this really is and what we're trying to do to work through. All the same while that we want to honor jobs for people and programs for our kids. It is very, very severe. So I'll go ahead and I'll preface it with that, kind of tell you a little bit about us, what we're working on, and then we'll go from there. So thank you for letting us come today.
I'm Mike Estes. I'm the principal out at Farson.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Maloney. I'm the principal at Black Butte Alternative High School.
It's great to be here. My name is Wanda Maloney. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the district.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Bolton, and I'm the Human Resources Director for Sweetwater School District #1.
Good afternoon. I'm Darrin Peppar. I am principal at Rock Springs High School.
Can you guys hear me in the back if I don't have the microphone? Okay, I'll just use my teacher voice. And if you need me to grab the microphone, just let me know. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with this slide right here. Just a couple of things that I think are very interesting about the school district is we always talk about mission and vision. And we truly believe that you've got to have both of those things, because otherwise you might end up in some place that you really don't want to be. And it's always important to recognize the traditions that we have of how did we start, where did we come from, and what can we learn from those things in the past. Up on the top, you'll see that symbol there for the RS. And if you're from Rock Springs, or if you've only been here a short time, you see that a lot. It's on all of our letterhead, any correspondence that probably is coming home as a community member or a parent. But one of the things that we find very much so to be proud of is that symbol. Next fall, it actually turns 90 years old. And so we want to this year really make a big deal as we prepare for next fall about the ideas that went into the shovel and the pick. I'm not sure if you can see that. But Mr. Peppar and I and a team of folks, we've actually started to do the research on where that symbol came from. We went back to the student council kids that designed that 90 years ago. So we'd really like to honor the families from those people. And so it's really important because when they started that symbol, it was supposed to be for unity at the high school. And 90 years later, it's not only at Rock Springs High School, but you see that as the symbol for the district. So along those lines of tradition, though, I think we really need to talk about, you know, what represents Sweetwater 1. When you think about your school district, you know, what do they stand for and what really drives everything that they do? And that's where that vision and mission. We talk a lot about doing a quality education for all kids, and it's real easy to have those words in there, but it really does mean a lot. Because whether you're college-bound, career, or technical, or you want to go into the military or workforce, those are the kind of graduates that we need to make sure that we have skills ready to go. So whatever their avenue is, they are all set for whatever path that they choose to take. And when you think about that, that is a huge task to do. Rock Springs High School is about 1,400 students. Each of our secondary principals will tell you a little bit about their story. It's nice when you get to talk about your school and the things that you're most proud of. But as a community, that is a lot of graduates that we have coming through. And that's just at the high school. We've got others from Butte and we've got others from Farson-Eden as well. But when we talk about an education and what quality really means, there's a lot that goes into that. And all of you here play a strong advocacy piece with that as employers, business people, and leaders within the community. This slide right here really kind of describes us. What do we look like? I know Max was talking a lot about families that are dysfortunate, families that are really lacking the basic things that they need to survive every day, worrying about having presents under the tree for kids. I mean, we all, if you're a parent trying to rationalize what that would feel like, those are huge things to have to work through. What this slide really has is, if I go up here just a little bit, it has all the different districts going across, with Sweetwater 1 being on the left-hand side. What I like about this slide is only the picture that it shows about who we are. Because our enrollment, and this was at the end of last school year, our enrollment's down a little bit, but underneath that, where it has free and reduced eligible, these are kids that, it doesn't mean that they're on free or reduced lunch, it just means that they are eligible for that. So if we looked at the current numbers for this year, the enrollment's down a little bit, but I can tell you the second number right there, that 2,067, that number is up. So it's really saying we might have less students, but the need for our kids is greater and greater. So 2,000, almost 2,100 of those 6,000 students that we had last year, so a third, are eligible for free and reduced. For our special education students that receive services, about 800. And then on the bottom, our English language learner, we're about 500. And what's unique about this is, if you take a look, you can see all the different districts going across. Over on the other side, we have our friends over in Sweetwater 2. And when you look at their demographics, it's very different. They have half the students that we do on there. And you can see some of the subgroups of their populations are close for special services, but also they're very much different for our English learner students. So we have probably 5 times as many as what they do. And our districts are very close together for that. On this slide right here, what I'd like to share just very quickly is about students that come in and out of our district. And we call that mobility, when our kids come in and our kids come out. You might notice that this slide, actually it doesn't have the same format as all the other slides do, and that actually is on purpose there. It is an older slide from the district that goes back to 07, 08 up through 9, 10. And my point for this slide is actually down here on the bottom. In the red, it talks about how many different schedule changes of kids that come in the district, students that leave the district. So if I have you take a look at these numbers, in 9-10, we had 808. So that means in that school year, that is how many changes of students coming in and out of the district that we had throughout that year. Now, when you think about that, even if you put it in terms of today, that is a lot of changes coming in and out. Kids that are here, kids that leave. My point for all of that, and you can see the numbers on the bottom, the 1,000 over to the 800. What I really wanted to show is that this is not a new problem that we've got for our county, for Sweetwater County, for number 1. Because when I look at the numbers that we have, so remember that was from 9-10, it had those 3 years ago. When we look at these numbers, this is as of the beginning of October of this year. So if I pulled those numbers again, those numbers would be higher. But if you take a look, these numbers on the last few years, we have 948, almost 1,000. And then even in the 2 months going into school, September, October, we had 410 changes of people in the district. And the reason why that is so important is because when we talk about who we are, and it doesn't take away from giving anyone a quality education, but it really helps us know what are we looking at when those kids come through the door, and what is the best way that we service those kids when we have limited time with them, but you want to make every single minute count towards those kiddos. So we know we've got a lot that are free and reduced, and that we have a lot of changes that come through on the district. So if you could kind of hold that idea in your mind, and then I want to transition real quick, and then Wanda, I'm going to turn it over to you. On this slide right here, it's kind of a math kind of slide, and if you would just give me 1 minute with it, I'm an old math teacher, and so old habits kind of die hard. But what this really talks about, when we look at what are the best ways to teach our kids, we want to do things that are going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. You want to do things that are very powerful and that are going to help our students succeed in the best way that they can. This right here is from a gentleman called John Hattie. He's a researcher, and what he really found was that when you start seeing some numbers in a minute, if you could just remember this for us. If it's 0.4, that's called the hinge point. And it means that if you go to school every day and you have a good teacher, that's going to be the progress that a normal child would make in the course of a school year, if you see 0.4. So you have a teacher that has good teaching strategies, they understand the curriculum, so they do a pretty good job. If anything is above the 0.4, so any of these numbers over here, the higher the number, the stronger the influence that it would have in your classroom. So for us, anything that's over here on these areas, I mean even the yellow and the gold, that means they're kind of mediocre things, but I'd really like you to notice the reverse, the red. That means when you see some things here in just a minute, that if you do those things, that you are actually moving kids backwards. So they're not making the growth in a standard year. They are honestly going backwards. And we'll tie that all together for you here in just 1 second.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Kelly, for sharing that information, and I'm going to continue to build on that. And it's important to recognize that we do have a variety of students coming through our doors every day. And so as educators, we need to find ways to support them. And we believe in our district that every child deserves more than 1 year's growth. They deserve, if we know how to do it and have the teachers in place, to give them 2 years growth or 3 years growth. And that's why we continue to look at research so that we're making the best decision for your children. As we look at the first one, you can see the effect size 1.57, well above the 0.4. Collective teacher efficacy. What we know is the teacher in the classroom makes all the difference. But what this really says is when you have a group of teachers that are working together on common goals, they can support and they can provide instruction in ways that can move children 2 to 3 years. And so keep that in mind. Some of the other things that we have listed up here are other directions that we're focusing. Classroom discussion. You want your children to leave school being able to justify, to be able to explain, to be able to sit in forums like this and make decisions. And so we're continuing to look for ways to embed that into your child's education. Clarity and feedback, those two go hand in hand. It's what the teacher does every day in the classroom to explain directions and give feedback. And then lastly, the teacher-student relationship. I think all of you can remember a teacher that connected with you, that was an advocate for you. I know I certainly can, and that's really why I'm in education today. I had somebody that really believed in me, that was an advocate, and that helped me pursue my dreams. And so we know that all of these things are important. We also know that John Hattie has identified some things that do the reverse. And this is important for us as a district because we need to address these things. So summer vacation, I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. When kids are out of school, they maybe aren't picking up as many books or reading or doing summer projects. Retention, television, some of those are not a surprise. But what was a surprise, even to us in education, was the influence of mobility, negative 0.34. Remember that hinge point of 0.4. This has a significant effect on kids when they move from school to school, when they move from district to district. They have gaps in their education, and so it's important that we're having interventions and things in place to support them. This last one was most alarming to me of everything, and this comes out of his newer research. And you can see the effect that depression has, negative 0.42. That's almost a year backwards. Kids coming into our district that are suffering from depression, we definitely need to make sure that we have counselors, that we have advocacy programs in our schools to support kids who have those kind of mental health needs. So again, these are some of the things that we're addressing in our district. We recognize that research plays a big part in what we choose to do, and these are the same things. And the principals will go into more detail and give you some more examples of what they're doing specifically. Turn it over to Mr. Peppar.
Thank you.
Darrin,
Yes.
do you mind if I jump in just
Please.
real quick? On that one slide where they had the mobility as negative 0.34, one of the things that I found actually very, very alarming from his research was that when you have kids moving in and out of your schools, if they don't make a friend in the first month of school, then those kind of kids, they don't make a friend. And what they do is they just wait until it's time to move again. And so if we know that, how powerful that is, we know that whatever happens, we've got to make sure that those kids have the relationships with an adult and then as well with a friend.
Okay. So let's see if I can get this going in the right direction. Okay. So the opportunity I have this afternoon is to explain a little bit to you about accountability. And to be honest with you, accountability in education is probably a master's level 3 credit course, and I'm going to try and do it in about, 3 minutes. So in essence, accountability in education really came into play in 1994 when the Bush administration passed the No Child Left Behind Act. That took a lot of the things related to test scores and graduation rates and moved them from curiosity and discussion point to truly accountability points. We could talk forever about No Child Left Behind, but I'm going to skip over that. And I'm going to fast forward to the year 2013. In 2013, the Wyoming legislature said, you know, we appreciate that there's all of these different federal accountability pieces that are put on our schools, but we want to make sure that we have some control over that. We want to have local control. So they passed the Wyoming Accountability in Education Act, WAEA. And it's been through a few different iterations over the last few years, but it's been very consistent in specifically how do you hold schools accountable. The key areas that they hold schools accountable through WAEA begin with our test scores. We hear about test scores quite a bit. For elementary schools, 3 through 8, that's going to be the PAWS test. For our high schools, that's going to be tied to the ACT. So our sophomores and our freshmen take the ACT Aspire test, and then our juniors, of course, take the ACT exam. One misnomer about the ACT exam that a lot of people don't know as it relates to accountability, our juniors will take the ACT in late April of their junior year. If the junior has taken the ACT multiple times before that, even if that score was higher than the one they get in April of their junior year, that's the score that counts for the state accountability. So that day, it's truly a snapshot of how are the kids doing on that particular day. So it does make for kind of an interesting paradigm. Now our juniors do get to use their higher ACT scores in all the other things, college applications and Hathaway money and those types of things. But for the accountability piece, that's where it really ties in. Another piece related to the accountability is graduation rates, and that's obviously specific to high schools. The state target is 80%. That's where the state has set the bar as, you know what, for schools to be meeting the target, we need to be at 80%. There are a few other pieces that go into it. I'm not going to give you a whole bunch on this. In a few minutes when we talk about the website, I'll show you very quick. I have 3 video podcasts that really break down accountability. If you really, really want to watch those, I'll show you how to get to them. Okay? If you don't, I will not be offended by that. Jump into last year, and the Obama administration passed the Every Student Succeeds Act, which was really a reauthorization of No Child Left Behind, but it had quite a few changes in the actual structure. The most important part of it was it gave local control back to state legislators, primarily for the accountability in education. Great news for Wyoming because we already had WAEA. So we know in legislative session right now, WAEA will be revisited just a tiny little bit because there's some little things, one additional indicator that comes in through ESSA. But for the most part, we already know how the accountability is going to impact us here in the state of Wyoming. And another great part about WAEA, when that bill was passed, a couple of different committees were put together. The most important was an accountability advisory group, and Sweetwater 1 has a member on that advisory group that advises the legislators on the steps to take. So, and that would be Chris Kundle, who's a principal at Wanda. There's all kinds of stuff we could go even further with accountability, but like I said, that's a master's level course, and I'm happy to teach it if you really want to listen to it. Graduation rates, though, something I want to be very clear with on graduation rates is how that's actually calculated. Prior to No Child Left Behind, like I said, it was really just kind of a curiosity. And the way it was calculated was, how many seniors do you have at the beginning of the year? How many seniors graduated? Well, there's your numerator and your denominator. Do the math. It's so much more complicated than that now. And actually, we'll show you on our website here in just a little bit. We've got it broken down in some really good, clean language. But basically, look at it like this. Any student who begins their freshman year at Rock Springs High School, so the class of 2017 will graduate in May this year, May 27th, 10 o'clock, be there, it'll be a great time. So, fall of 2013 was when they started their freshman year. That is when their cohort was established. That cohort continues all the way until May 27th of 2017. And it actually extends beyond that because kids who graduate summer school also count as part of that cohort. But anywhere along that continuum, if a kid leaves, they are leaving the cohort. But if they leave the cohort and don't tell anyone, they just move away. They don't request records when they go to the other school. They drop out. They get a GED. There's a lot of different ways they can just leave. If they haven't notified us and we don't have the appropriate documentation, they count against us as a dropout. I'll give you an example. Graduation rates for the class of 2016 actually will be released by the WDE tomorrow. We already know what our numbers are, but we can't tell you because they're embargoed. But what we do know is when we look at our individual data, I had 4 students who, the beginning of their freshman year, and this was class of 2016, so fall of 2012, were promoted from the junior high to the high school. They never came to school. They moved somewhere. They didn't request records. All 4 of them are dropouts at Rock Springs High. Odds are pretty good they graduated someplace. But we don't know that. right, because they didn't request a record. So that mobility piece doesn't just impact us in the classroom, it also impacts us when we look at those graduation rates. One other thing on graduation rate, just really quick, that again, the Accountability Act has done for us. We're looking every year at our 4-year graduation rates. It's an important rate. But when it comes to the accountability model for the state, really big victory for schools in the state of Wyoming. We actually look at what's called our extended rate. So students who graduate in 5 years or even 6 years will count within that graduation rate. Those of you who run businesses and hire people, I'm sure you want them to be at least high school graduates, but you probably don't ask, did you graduate in 4 years or 5 years? Probably doesn't matter because they've earned that high school diploma. So a big victory there that we're able to count them. When we look historically, and go back to right around the time of No Child Left Behind, this upper line represents state of Wyoming, and the lower line represents Rock Springs, or Sweetwater 1. Back in 95-96, you can see 78% was the state graduation rate, 65.8 for Sweetwater 1. Jump ahead, and you see the state is still right in that 78-79 range, where obviously we have closed the gap considerably. I think you see some nice, interesting little balances in there, but I'm going to turn it to Mr. Estes real quick to
Superintendent, you have about 5 minutes.
What he was talking about, as you look at the state's graduation rates, you notice the peaks and valleys. If you really get into some statistical analysis on that function, you'll notice that it follows the boom and bust cycle of our economy. It's not exact. It's more of a loose correlation, but there is a correlation between our boom and bust economy in Wyoming and the graduation rate in the state. But as you can see, Sweetwater 1 has definitely closed the gap on the state over the last 20 years.
biggest view down
Okay. This graph shows the graduation rates at each school. Some of the things that we're doing at Farson to encourage to increase our graduation rate. First thing is with the teacher efficacy, the collective teacher efficacy, we are having PLCs, our high school PLC, that's a professional learning community. We get together every other week and problem solve the students that have been identified as at risk of dropping out. What can we do differently to encourage them to stay in school, to find a way to get them a credit that they might be missing? What can we do for these students? So we are getting together and we're problem solving those students. But that goes on also. I get along real well with the middle school principal at Farson. For those that don't know, Farson's a K-12 school, so that's me. And the middle school PLC also meets, and as we identify the students in middle school that might be at risk of dropping out, we're able to communicate that real well with the high school, and we're working not only on our high school kids, but on our middle school kids. Because in a book I once read, probably in a master's level class, it said kids don't drop out in high school. That's just when they stop coming. They're actually dropping out. We're disengaging them in middle school. So I have an advantage at some point because I get to work real close with all the kids, 6 through 12, well, K-12. But starting in 6th grade now, we're doing interest inventories where we are finding out what interests the kids, and we're building, so by the time they get to the end of 8th grade, we're going to have a 5-year plan so they know what they're doing in their freshman year, but not only what they're doing, but why they're doing it. So at the end of high school, they even have a plan to what they're going to do at the end of that. Hopefully, we'll continue to have a high graduation rate and catch more of the kids that we're losing right now. And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Maloney.
Okay. I'm Mike Maloney, the principal at the Alternative High School. And what we do at the Alternative School to try to increase our graduation rate is we try to get kids a connection to school. We take an alternative approach to instruction, and we really focus on our school culture, our school climate. So we have every student is assigned an intervention teacher, an adult advocate for them, and twice a week they meet with that small group each teacher does. They check on grades, they check on progress, and they just check in with the student. In our building, our kids have no less than at least 10 adults who know them by name. We can do that because we're such a small school, so 10 adults know every kid by name in our building. We approach instruction a little bit differently. We really incorporate technology. We have some online classes that kids can take in our building. We have some blended classes where it's a combination of some direct instruction and some online components. And of course, we have access to Western Wyoming, so we have the opportunity to get our kids over to the college to take classes, and we have a lot of students that take advantage of that. We also incorporate a lot of projects into our classes to try to make it look a little different than a traditional school. And we have a little bit different accountability model. Two of the things that we're required to do is we're required to have a student success plan on file for every student in our building. And so that teacher that's assigned to that student as their adult advocate helps and meets with them a couple times a year to update that student success plan, which is about goals and a resume, letters of recommendation, tracking their own graduation progress, taking more responsibility for their learning. And the other thing is we have to do a school climate survey. And I was thrilled with our school climate survey. It basically surveys respect, support, trust, and expectations in the building, and we scored in the high 90s, the high 80s and low 90s in every category, and we were substantially higher than the state average in all the categories. And so our students feel like they're getting a good opportunity in our building, and they feel like that there's trust in the building, there's respect, there's high expectations, and overall they're having a good experience.
Okay, and I'll just very quick, there's so many things going on at Rock Springs High, but as far as what are we doing to impact graduation rate and some of those things, really for us it comes down to focusing on the interests and the long-term goals that our students have. So really focusing on that career, college, and military readiness. I can talk forever about our career academies. I'm going to skip over those for right now. But really, some of the biggest things that we've accomplished are related to our partnership with Western Wyoming Community College, and then also with Dr. Kraft and BOCES. Through those two entities, we've gone from my first year, or the year before I became the principal, we had about 700 credits earned by our high school students at Western Wyoming Community College. Last year, well over 2,000 credits were earned by students at Western. And we're in the process of developing pathways where some of our students could begin as early as sophomores, moving into early college, but then also some of our students that are really focused on going right into the workforce, right out of high school. We're developing programs for them also to start as early as their sophomore year, moving towards earning some of those classes they're going to need for certification, whether that's electrical and instrumentation or auto mechanic, diesel mechanic, welding, those types of things. We want to have our kids as prepared as possible, regardless of the route they want to take when they graduate from high school. So I could talk forever on that, but I'll turn it back over to Kelly.
Nicole, do you want to talk about opportunities?
We're getting close, yes.
Okay.
You should close it up if you want, Kelly, we're going to open that they can come to a couple times.
Okay. Actually, on this last slide, what follows after that is just to talk to you a little bit about the cost-saving task force. But a lot of times we get asked questions from our community about how can we be involved in our school district? What can we do so that we can support the work that the schools are doing, but we know that our community has so much to offer in the education as we move forward. On this slide, it lists a lot of the different things about where people can become involved. And so if you are interested in any capacity about some expertise that you have for our schools, or even just a small amount of time to come in with our classrooms, because at the beginning we mentioned about the money and the legislation that we have and the obstacles that we're really up against in the next little bit. So any ideas that we have to help us really think outside the box are going to be really, really important. And the last thing that I just wanted to mention is the cost savings task force. We've put that together. Actually, our first night is this coming Thursday night. We have a plan that we meet 4 different times. Dr. Bernadine Kraft is going to be our facilitator. And we really have a nice mixture in that group of community partners. We have teachers, we have administrators, business partners, parents. I mean, there's just an amalgam of people that are really going to be a part of this. But I think one thing that's really important is even if you're not a part of that task force, is the voice that you have to make input on that for your school district, ideas that you have. Because with the amount of deficit that we are going to be facing, any idea is a great idea. And so the public forums for that are the 19th of this month. And Dave mentioned that we have 3 of them, and we do. The first one is 7 to 9 in the morning, and those are at the Central Administration Building. The second one is from 11 until 1, so we try to cross over during lunchtime for people. And it wouldn't take that whole time. It's just if you have an idea to share, come on in and please share it with us. We're very open to hear what you have to say. And then the third is that evening, and it's from 6 to 8. And we'll advertise again for those. We'll get that out the day before. But what we really wanted to show was, what does your school district look like? What are the needs of our students that we have when they come through the door? And what are we up against as we move forward so that we get the right amount for all kids and for all staff? So with that, Dave, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to you.
Thank you. That's good.